Hello, y'all. Welcome back to Baylin's Book Club. It's me, Baylin. What are we drinking? What are we drinking? As you can tell, I'm super excited. Hi, let's open. And that's because, honey, I am opening up some jalapeno pineapple margarita. Yes. Yes, Hispanic Heritage Month. Yes, that's gonna be my excuse, right? Isn't this such a cute little bottle? Such a cute little color. Don't worry, it's only 20%. Okay. Um, let's taste her. I've never had it before. She smells it. Oh, I hope you didn't hear my stomach. Okay. The jalapeno. It's there. Interesting. Very interesting. Like literally just interesting. I love trying fun alcohol. Okay. Today we are going to be finishing up The House on Mango Street. Um, I love the second half of this book. It really shows how much she has matured in her writing, and obviously she does that on purpose. I said in the beginning that the chapters were really short, and I kind of thought originally when I first had this impression of the book that it was very juvenile, but that's quite purposeful because as we get through the book, she's maturing in the way that she writes, in the way that she thinks and expresses things. There's a lot more figurative language for us to get into. As you can tell, y'all, I'm excited. Okay, every page is written on. All right, you couldn't really see what I wrote at all, actually. But yes, I just love the second half of this book. It shows immense growth. Um, I'm ready to wrap it up. Let's go. So right now we are on chapter 21 called The First Job, and many poor families and immigrant families, because of their unfortunate status and lack of money and resources and people that care, often their children have to go to work at very early ages. Like I'm talking 10, 12, maybe even younger. My ex started working at his grandma's mattress factory when he was 9 years old to try and make money for the family. So it is something that unfortunately also aids in the cycle of poverty because obviously if you have to focus so much on working, you simply cannot focus that much on school, especially as a child that doesn't have their own transportation, that doesn't really have a say over their life, right? And then it kind of keeps you in this place because you don't really have any other experiences, and it just adds to the cycle of poverty. So let's also keep in mind for the rest of the book, just right off the bat, men are not really mentioned. And what I mean by that is one, if a man is mentioned, it's usually something not good is going on. Okay. But Sandra Cisneros, she is very adamant about showing the difference in life, especially in this book, growing up being a boy versus a girl, especially with the like cultural things that are going on. And we really see in the latter half of this book how disconnected men and women's worlds are because she can't and she doesn't really comment on the world of men as they are coming of age. So I really thought that was interesting. And, maybe that's why I like the second half of the book, child. Esperanza comes home from school and she's actually soaking wet. And this is because Tito, if you'll remember him, okay, pushed her into a fire extinguisher. Right. Now, she has a complex crush on this boy, and she even says that she kind of let him push her into a fire extinguisher. And so she didn't really say anything. And so we're seeing that as she matures and as she develops, she's figuring out what sexuality is, what it means to be attracted to a person. And unfortunately, there's just not many healthy examples of attraction and relationships on Mango Street. So, just keep that in mind. She's got a crush on this boy. She kind of lets him do fucked up shit because she has a crush on him, right? But she comes in soaking wet, so she's a little bit embarrassed. But her aunt, I think her aunt Yaya, I think is her name, Lala, something like that, is in there. And she's like, hey girl, how old are you? How old are you again? Yeah, I have a job for you. Dress up real nice. Tell them you're older and we gonna put you to work. So she goes to this first job and she is playing a character of an adult. She's dressed in like her nice dress that makes her look older, according to her mom. She does her hair a little bit so it doesn't look so crazy. She keeps to herself. She doesn't really know how to conduct herself at this job, right? And it's very obvious. So she's kind of uncomfortable with her coworkers at this point, which is fine, right? But then there's an older man that she, because he is older, deems as less threatening, that she's like, oh, okay, let me come talk to this man, let me bond with this man. He invited me to sit with him at lunch because she had been sitting, I think it said, in the closet to eat her lunch. So she's like, okay, let's chill with this man. And he says, do you know what day it is today? And she's like, no. And he's like, it's my birthday. Will you give me a kiss for my birthday? And here we're going to pause, okay? Because in this moment, she literally says, well, I was thinking about giving him a kiss because he's an old man, like little kiss on the cheek, whatever. But before she could even give this man her consent, which she was literally planning to do, he grabs her face and kisses her anyway. First day of work, mind you. And I'm going to say that she, like, ages aren't really discussed much in this book. I'm going to say she can't be more than 15. And this kind of sets the tone, unfortunately, for her future like sexual experiences and her exploring her sexuality. Is it has to do a lot with like consent not being respected, or people, whether you were going to give it or not, just feeling entitled to whatever you've got to give. And that's unfortunately a hallmark for a lot of women while they're coming of age, but especially for immigrant women in lower income areas that don't have as many resources, people to tell, people to care, right? And so that's kind of how we're starting off the second half of this book. And, I will say that most women have that experience that kind of sets off the second half of their life. Usually it is a little bit of an assault. Yeah. So that's Esperanza's first job. In fact, the second half of this book deals with a lot of firsts for Esperanza. The second first in chapter 22, Papa Who Wakes Up Tired in the Dark, is death. Okay, we haven't really discussed death in this book too much, and definitely not when it pertains to Esperanza's family. So her grandfather has died, and her father tells her first because she's the oldest, right? And she says this is the first time she's ever seen her father cry. He just kind of crumpled into her. And in this moment, we see that she is both the child and the parent. She's comforting a child who just lost his dad. Like, her dad is usually not even in the house in the morning. He's off to work. Like I said in the last, video, he's a working man. He's very rigid. He knows what he's here to do, right? And right now he's crumpled on his oldest daughter's bed, sobbing in her lap. And so she's also looking at him though as, well, that's my dad, and one day I'm going to be in this position. The torch is going to be passed to me. One day I'm going to lose my father just like he's losing his father. And so we kind of see a generational display of emotion here, and it's just a really beautiful chapter. But what I also think is interesting is, she said that she's in charge of telling her other siblings because she's the oldest, which I'm like, you're still the parent though, so you could tell your other children, right? But then it's like, who told the mom? I ain't heard nothing about the mom being told by the dad or Esperanza that the grandfather is dead. And so I just think that's interesting. I mean, maybe the mom already knows, but she does say that she was the first to know. Her dad told her first because she's the oldest, and she don't talk to her mom that much. So I just think it's an interesting dynamic that we've got going on. You didn't tell your wife first? Interesting. So next we have the first chapter that really shows through writing how much Esperanza has matured. Let me see if I can. Yep, there we go. It is, I think, the longest chapter so far, and it deals with a lot of complex emotions that I am excited to get into. So, Esperanza is outside playing with Lucy and Rachel, and they have developed this game. It's kind of like 21 Questions, where they impersonate someone, and the other people have to guess who they're impersonating. And usually, it's famous people, right? But then they started doing people that they know, people that they see up and down Mango Street, just people that, only they would know, like an inside joke type thing. Well, Esperanza has this aunt. She was very, very beautiful. She has two sons, a husband, beautiful house, beautiful, beautiful everything, beautiful gowns. Y'all know what I'm, beautiful gowns, beautiful gowns. Um, she loved to swim. She had long swimmer's legs. She went swimming one day. As you know, may or may not know, you better find out right now, sometimes when you put your head under certain waters, the parasites love getting in there and they can cause horrible, horrible, horrible infections, especially if you cannot get help for them. So that's exactly what happened to her. And now she is permanently disabled. Her legs are shriveled up and atrophied. She's blind and she's bedridden, right? So that's her aunt, right? And so one day they decide, they've run out of people to impersonate. They decide to impersonate the aunt. They throw their heads back and they go limp and they pretend that they can't see. And they're like, yeah, we're impersonating the aunt right now. Well, that day she died. So now Esperanza is dealing with that. What makes this even more awful for specifically Esperanza is that she would go over to her aunt's house quite often and she liked her aunt. And her aunt was one of the people who would listen to her writing and listen to her poems and tell her that she needed to keep writing. She had a good relationship with this aunt, right? And so the guilt that she's feeling is quite complex because we can also see, she's had her struggles with religion, right? She's had her struggles with why do bad people get good things? Why do good people have bad things happen? And so, in her mind, especially given her experience, her name, how everyone treats her, she feels as though she is born bad. She is born bad. And maybe she deserved that disability. She deserved to die that day. But instead, it all went to her aunt, who no one has anything bad to say about, right? Um, Esperanza also says that no one knew that she had been dying for so long. Her condition was so dire for so long that it just became normal. And maybe she kind of stopped complaining about it because she just knew that people wouldn't help or couldn't help, right? And it kind of gave the impression that she was just waiting to die in that room. And to an extent, I can understand why. Her husband stopped cleaning the house, most likely was cheating on her. She never saw him. Her room, everyone was like, oh, she couldn't see how dirty and nasty the house was. But just because you're blind doesn't mean you can't smell, doesn't mean you can't feel when it's grimy. Sometimes you walk into your house and you're just like, ugh. Like you can sense that you need to clean. You can sense that it's dusty. You can sense that there's pet hair in the carpet. You know what I mean? And so she's in this nasty house that's gotten grosser and grosser. Her children aren't listening to her because it's not like she can discipline them anyway, unfortunately. So she has just been kind of rotting here, just waiting, just waiting. And unfortunately, that's the reality for many disabled people, especially in the United States with our terrible healthcare and our pseudo ugly laws. What are ugly laws? Oh, we're going to get into them. I love my tangents about the horrible, horrible history of this country. So that's what we're going to do today. First, let me lower my chair a little bit. Jesus, there we go. So, what are the ugly laws? The ugly laws were discriminatory ordinances enacted in the United States between 1867 and 1974. So, this is between the Civil War and World War, up to World War II. Yeah, yeah. The first law was enacted in San Francisco. We just gotta love California, right? In 1867, prohibiting individuals who were diseased, maimed, mutilated, or deformed from exposing themselves in public. And so, oh, don't worry, I have more. But this is the foundation of our culture, right? Many people love to say that this is the land of opportunity and anyone can be anything. And even if you're disabled, well, you can pick yourself up by your bootstraps and you can take advantage of the American system and you can be good too. No, and I am bringing this up during Hispanic Heritage Month for a reason. We're gonna get to it. Don't you worry. Um, During this period, there was a big urban boom, and a lot of people were moving into I've been sipping on this drink, child. A lot of people were moving into the United States, and as a result of this, a lot of people were strangers to each other. A lot of people were already operating on an underlying uncomfortability with most people around them. And what made people more uncomfortable was looking at disabled people and beggars. Obviously, there were more beggars coming in because there were more people coming in. There were more disabled people coming in because there were more people to maybe try and help and create a community. And just a denser population of people is going to mean a denser population of all kinds of people, right? Everyone was going to California to try and look for opportunities. Instead of helping these disabled and impoverished people, California decided that we're just not going to allow you to beg. Street begging, it's illegal now. They knew exactly who that was going to affect, mostly disabled Black and brown people and immigrants, right? A couple years later, a disabled woman from Portland was basically paid off to leave the state because she was an unsightly scene for children because she was disabled. In Portland, in gay old Portland, in gay old California. Yeah, yeah. Even though the children are the least affected by things like this, and whenever people are trying to convince you that they're right, the first thing they're going to do is think about the children. The children sure aren't thinking about it. That child don't care if that man has one leg. You care. You care. Anyways, we can see that Esperanza actually, is evidence of this. She didn't care necessarily that her aunt was disabled. She still went and read stories to her. She still talked to her. She still had a relationship with her. Even to the point where, okay, and remember, she is still a child at this point, so we do have to give her some grace because it's not like she's being raised. You know, she saw her aunt as such a normal person, even despite her disability, that making fun of her disability was like making fun of someone for having freckles and red hair. It was just another attribute to her aunt. Am I saying that you should make fun of people's disabilities? No. But I am saying that she didn't look at it as, oh, I can't touch that because that's just like so taboo. I don't want to see it. I don't want to acknowledge it. No, my aunt is disabled. Well, yes. Well, yes. That's kind of her line of thinking. But we can't even get to someone's disability just being a fact about them because of this underlying culture of hating disabled people that we have built and are continuing to build on. Don't worry, I'm gonna keep going. When the police sweep homeless encampments simply because people don't want to look at them, people don't want to acknowledge that homeless people exist and are outside and like don't have homes because they're homeless, that is ugly laws. When a place is so inaccessible to disabled people that they just don't go, like restaurants, lots of people in wheelchairs just don't go out to eat because, well, it's kind of embarrassing to force you guys to put me in a place that obviously you did not design for me to be in. Ugly laws. When people, oh my gosh. And I'm not even a fan of children, but it's very obvious when a child is having a tantrum versus when a disabled child is having some kind of episode that requires more context. To film that shit in public and then publicly ridicule people, that's ugly laws. The fact that disabled people get unproportionately bullied, doxxed, censored, and removed from social media, that's ugly laws. And because it's not built into some sort of legal jargon, it's a lot harder to combat. It's a lot harder to stop because technically now what you're doing is just being an asshole, honestly, and that's not illegal. Right. They're not legally enforcing you to be an asshole either. So it's not like, you can sue. And we have this, again, underlying culture that is not necessarily legal. No one's telling you to think that way, but it is happening. And this is why we see disabled people retreat into their homes, retreat into themselves and away from people, and just wait to die and hope that maybe there are some people who are nice enough to come meet them where they're at and see them as people. But for the most part, it fucking sucks. So, back to the book, let's tie it back in. Esperanza is dealing with these immense, immense, immense feelings of guilt and feeling like she's never going to be able to undo that because she knows how people saw her aunt, right? And if she tells people, oh, my aunt died, the reaction that she's going to get from those people is not the reaction that she's feeling inside. And that's something that she knows she's never going to get rid of, especially since a part of her maybe didn't feel like she caused it, but feels like, man, my aunt didn't even know I was making fun of her disability the day that she died from it. And that's something she's never going to be able to get rid of. So that's another first for Esperanza, is feeling these adult complex emotions that will stay with you for the rest of your life. In the next chapter, we see Esperanza go to a tarot reader, further, kind of exploring her relationship with religion and belief systems. And this tarot reader doesn't tell her much, maybe isn't the most reliable or, real, spiritual person, if you will. But she does tell you that, there's a home in your heart. And, the house that you're kind of hoping for, girl, you got to build that home in your heart first. And Esperanza's kind of like, okay, but doesn't really get it. But don't you worry. She knew what she was talking about. Okay. So in chapter 25, we kind of see a shift in the book and we go to talking about the women on Mango Street and kind of giving them voices through each chapter. So the first woman that we're looking at, if you'll remember from the last video, one of Louis's cousins, Marin, she got sent to live with Louis by her parents because she's sexual, basically. So this is called Geraldo, no last name. So Geraldo is a man that only Marin knows, and she goes out dancing with him sometimes. He gets into a bad accident, and honestly, he could have been saved. I think it was a car accident, but because no one knows his last name, he has no information, and obviously, this area probably doesn't have the most resources or the most space, you know, he's kind of ignored and he bleeds out and dies right in front of her. Um, and everyone's wondering why Marin is so upset over this. And even Esperanza is like, talking to herself, being like, well, it's not like he was your boyfriend. Uh, Obviously, it's because they probably had sex, situationship type deal going on. Maybe no one knew he was her boyfriend, but he was definitely something to her. And this chapter shows, unfortunately, how immigrants get forgotten because they don't have information here. They don't have papers here. And that sounds very degrading to be like, oh, you don't have papers, you don't exist. But to some degree, when it comes to things like this, well, that's exactly what happens. And, the rest of the chapter talks about no one ever saw the kitchenettes and the two-room flats that he rented, the weekly money orders that he sent home after he would go to work. No one sees these people just trying to survive until they stop surviving, and then all they see is another dead immigrant, right? And so someone like Marin, maybe he wasn't gonna be her husband or something, but she realized that him dying here meant that no one knew him anymore. He couldn't contact his family. She couldn't even contact his family back in whatever country he was from. She didn't even know his last name. Literally, he ceased to exist, except only in Marin's mind. And still, everyone was asking her, why do you care? And I think it's a beautiful chapter, and it really shows the pain that a lot of immigrants carry because they've seen so many people die that, you know, they have to act like don't exist. The next two women that we're going to be observing are named Edna and Ruthie. Edna is Ruthie's mother, and she owns this big, like, apartment complex on Mango Street, and she's kind of just like a terrible landlord, a slumlord type deal. She has a revolving door of people and will evict you for literally anything. She evicted this one lady for having a duck, which Esperanza, she was like very flabbergasted at that, but I was kind of like, I mean, if the duck isn't allowed, I'm sorry, but when I evict you, I don't know, maybe like charge them a pet fee, girl. Like it really cannot be that deep. But no one really likes Edna. She likes to get rid of people, shall we say. She gets tired of people very easily. Well, Ruthie is one person that she was not able to get rid of. She tried because Ruthie was married off to some dude, and I say that she was married off, not that she married him, because it is very obvious that Ruthie is mentally delayed. I can't necessarily tell you what's wrong with her. I think it's written that way because Esperanza wouldn't have been able to tell us, what's wrong with her. Just that you get the impression she talks like a child, she acts like a child. She's not really there when people are talking to her. But she is a full grown adult. And so, because her mother very obviously doesn't like her, um, I feel as though her mother probably gave her away to the first man that would take her. Um, and she ended up coming back, and she very obviously resents Ruthie for coming back because she is the one person that she cannot get rid of, her own daughter, right? And we see these complex relationships with mothers, especially in impoverished areas, because if you'll notice, there is no dad mentioned. And in places where, assault is rampant, you know, you do have a lot of mothers that hold some kind of resentment towards their children because they never wanted them in the first place. And I can't say 100% that Edna never wanted Ruthie, but she probably never wanted a disabled child. And, that goes back to these ugly laws where it's kind of like you want to hide these things away. You want to hide the fact that you gave birth to a disabled child. You'd rather marry them off and put them in another house and kind of forget that they exist. And, it's just another familial relationship that unfortunately is negatively impacted by being impoverished, not having resources, and our terrible culture. But what we also see is Esperanza is one of the only people that talks to Ruthie, one, and talks to her just regularly, two. Doesn't talk to her like a child. She reads Ruthie her poems just like her aunt and some of her other friends. And so we see two constants in Esperanza's life, and that's an appreciation for the voice of women and literature. And I think those are two very good things for a young girl to be about. The next chapter we have is called The Earl of Tennessee, and I actually love this chapter, so let's get into it. So a contributing factor to the ugly laws, as I mentioned, was the fact that a lot of people were strangers and therefore did not care about each other and cared about the disabled population even less. But you see that in places, usually lower income places, have more of a sense of community in the sense that they know their neighbors. I've lived all around the US. I've lived in different countries, right? And I will say the nicer the house gets, the less you know who lives around you. And there are some things that can be said about this. One, obviously, when you're in lower income areas and you have less resources, you just simply have to rely on each other more for survival because no one is coming to help you. But it's also a safety measure to know who lives around you and the routines of them for yourself and for them. For example, let's say you say good morning to an elderly lady that lives across from you every day before you go to school, and for 3 days, she doesn't show. Well, after the third day, maybe even after the second day, you're going to be like, something's wrong. Miss Girl is not outside. And then maybe you call the police, or maybe you get a group of adults to go in and knock the door down and see what's going on. And then maybe you find that she fell, or maybe you find that she died. And you wouldn't have been able to figure that out if you didn't know things like her routine. So it kind of keeps everyone in check and keeps everyone safe, right? So we have the Earl of Tennessee, and everyone knows where he lives, what he does, what time he goes to work. He's the Earl. His name is Earl, and he's the Earl of Tennessee. And what I think is really interesting is that the one thing people don't know about him is who his wife is. And here we can still see that Esperanza is still a little bit mentally immature, though she is getting there. She's like halfway there, right? Everyone's like, no, his wife is a redhead that wears pink shorts. No, his wife is a brunette that wears short skirts. What do we know, y'all? Earl likes hookers. The next chapter is called Sire, and before I even get to the chapter, child, I gotta talk about the title. Okay, so Sire, it's giving Sir, it's giving King, it's giving above, it's giving pedestal. So just remember that through no fault of her own, Esperanza is putting this man on a pedestal, and obviously these are probably not like the real names of the people who lived on Mango Street, wherever her Mango Street was. But this Sire character is someone that she has put on a pedestal, and that is denoted by his name. So he is a boy that Esperanza obviously has an infatuation with, and he's, I'm guessing, kind of like an older boy. Her parents don't like him. Her dad says that he's a punk. Her mom says don't talk to him, but she just loves that dangerous little man. Okay, so one day she's walking down the street, and most girls, they cross the street when they walk by Sire and his friends because they know that they're going to be staring, right? And she says, no, I'm going to be strong and I'm going to stare at them back. And so she goes to stare at him, but she stares a little bit too long. and he stares a little bit too long too. And he's on his bike and he actually runs into a car because he's staring at her and they share a little thing. And she's like, "Oh, hey." Mind you, he has a girlfriend. So the other person she puts on a pedestal is the girlfriend. And the way she describes her is very, I would say, pure. She says she has like baby soft skin. She has baby pink painted toenails, dainty little feet. She's just the cutest, patootiest, girliest girl that ever girled, okay? And she might have a twinge of envy, but we'll get there. But the one thing that she says about her is, well, but she doesn't know how to tie her shoes. I do. And here we see that Esperanza is realizing that there are standards of beauty, and maybe she's not at the top, but she does have her brain. And so she's kind of comparing, like, well, yeah, maybe she's the most beautiful little fairy you've ever seen, but she can't tie her fucking shoes. But then we also see that she says, but Sire ties her shoes for her. Sire ties her shoes for her. And, this can mean a lot of things, but I think it's a metaphor for saying that Sire completes her. But I also think it could be saying that Sire is also trapping her. You don't get with a girl that doesn't know how to tie her shoes if you don't want a girl that doesn't know how to tie her shoes. Okay. So that every single day she needs you to tie her shoes for her. And we see this theme of men controlling women. And I really feel like this is a metaphor for that, where it's like, in some senses, it's like, oh, is she okay with being controlled? Because it's just so sweet that he's willing to tie her shoes. But at the same time, it's like, well, if she knew how to tie her shoes, would it be that much of a gesture that she got her shoes tied? You know what I mean? I hope I'm making sense. So another thing that Esperanza's parents say, not about Sire this time, but about his girlfriend, is that she's the type of girl to go in alleys, calling her a slut. Basically saying that, yeah, maybe she's like super pretty, super beautiful, but she's like ditzy, has no brain, and he's basically just using her for sex. And Esperanza, instead of being disgusted with that, has a wet dream about him. Yes. Oh, she has a little sexual dream about him, and she's like, Sire, is this how you touch her? How do you touch her? How do you hold her? I want to know. I want to be there. I want to be her. And she's, again, just exploring what sexuality is, what it is to be attracted to someone, what it is to want someone, that look in his eyes. What did that mean? How do men touch you? How does it make you feel to be the prettiest princess in the world? So the next chapter we have is just one of my favorites. It's a great chapter to analyze. I actually used to hate this chapter because in high school I got assigned this chapter. It's called Four Skinny Trees. And it's fairly short, as you can see. I got assigned some kind of project or report on it or something, and I was reading it over and over again, and I was just like, I have no fucking idea what this means. It's four trees. I'm so tired right now. I was really just not having a great time. But I love this chapter. Oh my gosh, there's so much symbolism we can get from it. Honestly, honestly, I could have done a lot with this, and I was just kind of over it and over school. Senioritis, I'll give myself a break. We're gonna make up for it today. So, first, we have to get into the title, okay? So, there are four siblings. Obviously, we have Esperanza, Nenny. She doesn't mention her brothers like literally at all at the end of this book. We'll just say her two brothers, because that's basically what they are. They don't have names at this point. They're gone with the wind, child. We don't know where they are. But these four trees can represent them as children, right? And so these four trees, she loves looking at them. She loves drawing inspiration from them because they have grown through the concrete, they have grown through the sidewalk, they have reached any bit of dirt that they can get, and they've climbed to find any bit of sun they can absorb just to live out of spite, basically. Just to live out of spite. And she says their only reason is to be and be. right? And she also says there are two things that I want to analyze here. That's the first one. And the second one is, let one forget his reason for being, they'd all droop like tulips in a glass. And we're going to get to that one first because it does come before the B and B. Sorry, I just like the second one better. Okay. She is the oldest sibling. She has been parentified, and we saw that when her grandfather died. The fact that she was in charge of telling the rest of her siblings she's not their parent. I mean, it's not her dad. Anyways, um, so in a sense, she's saying that she must stay strong for her siblings because if she wilts in this environment, well, she knows they're gonna wilt too because she's the strongest out of all of them, and she kind of has to be, right? She kind of has to be, but she's willing to take on that role, and she knows what it entails. And then, secondly, I'm just going to read the last few sentences. When there is nothing left to look at on this street, four who grew despite concrete, four who reach and do not forget to reach, four whose only reason is to be and be. And what I take from that is these trees aren't here to swing on like the one that was in Meme's backyard, right? They're not here to provide shade. They don't provide any fruit or flowers. They're not giving people any wood or materials. Their entire purpose of being on Mango Street is to be on Mango Street, is to be those four trees that are alive on Mango Street and nothing else. And guess what? They're still trees. They're still strong and they're still living and they're still trees. You know, you can still be a person without having to have a purpose. You know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of people don't understand that. You can live on this earth and just kind of float around and live your life. You can do that. You can do that. Every other animal, bro, like 50% of their life is just sitting around. It's just sitting around. And, you know, a cheetah is still a cheetah even when it's not running. A cow is still a cow, even when we can't get milk or a burger from it. You know, sometimes the point of living is to just be alive. This next chapter that we have, I also love, but it also just makes me extremely sad. And it's quite a realistic chapter, as you can see. I had my notes. Okay, I had my notes. So let's get into it. It's called No Speak English, and that's going to mean two things by the end of this chapter, which is quite interesting because we're dealing with a bilingual person, and then this, okay. So we have a family, right? Actually, at first we have a man who has been working every day to bring his wife from, I'm going to assume, Mexico. I don't remember it saying what country she came from. Like, I don't want to assume everyone on Mango Street is Mexican, but they also don't tell me the country that these people are coming from. Um, and he is working every day to bring her, right? One day she finally comes in a big yellow taxi, and you know, everyone is focused on the fact that she's really fat. But Esperanza just thinks she's a beautiful woman with tiny little feet. Esperanza is kind of obsessed with the size of people's feet. And I think that's quite interesting because in the intro, Sandra Cisneros says that she almost named this like the family of 4 feet or something, something about feet. And I'm just like, well, you know, girl, I can tell because you mention feet a lot. Anyways, um, she thinks this woman is just really pretty, really beautiful, and people are overly mean to her, right? And inside the house, you know, this woman has her baby, she has her son, and her husband is the breadwinner, and she really never comes out of the house. And Esperanza suspects that that's because she only knows 8 words in English, and that is no speak English. He not here in case the landlord comes, and holy smokes, which caught Esperanza by surprise. Um, and what we know about the father is that, again, hardworking man. Sometimes they hear him yelling down the street because his wife refuses to learn English and adapt to what is now her new home because she never wanted this to be her home. And here we again see the theme continued of a woman that kind of hitches on to a man and isn't able to get off the ride. And we can also see that she sits all day by the window. And remember, please remember, okay, because that's a big theme, especially starting now, that's when it starts theming up again, is that Esperanza never wanted to take her grandma's place by the window. And we see a lot of women taking her grandma's place by the window, and we get to, see the story behind the woman that doesn't get to come outside, right? So, he's not happy that she's refusing to learn English, and that she doesn't want to come outside, and that she's very uncomfortable here, and that's creating a lot of tension. And what makes it even worse is that her son starts to sing a song from a Pepsi commercial that he saw on TV in full perfect English. And then she says, "No speak English, no speak English, no speak English." And she starts sobbing because she can't believe her ears. And again, this is a very realistic depiction of what it is to realize that you are losing your culture. And maybe you had some hand in the fact that your child is never going to have that connection. And you might be like, "Oh, well, you can still teach them Spanish, you can still take them back," but taking them back is not taking them home. She knows now he has learned English, maybe he's 1 or 2 right now. It's a metaphor for the fact that, 1, it's not like he's singing it in Spanish. He didn't memorize a Spanish commercial, and I'm sure that she plays Spanish shows because she doesn't speak English. He memorized a Pepsi commercial, something that's, so American pop culture, right? I mean, Pepsi was the whole thing with Michael Jackson, right? Not Coke, right? It was Pepsi, I'm pretty sure. Just a very American thing to have as one of the first things that you are verbalizing, right? And then he's also never going to have that connection of Spanish being his main language. I mean, to for your default to be singing in English, it's probably your default to speak in English as well. And so also, she is probably going to be the only person in that house now speaking fluent Spanish because her man has already learned and is trying to encourage her to learn some more English because he's out working every day. He's already learned at least enough English to communicate with the people around him, get a job, continue working, build up a house, and do what he needs to do. And so, literally, she's realizing that her ties to her home, to her history, have been cut with this kid and with this man, and she is never going back. Another woman that we see trapped by a man is Rafaela, and that's in the chapter Rafaela, who drinks coconut and papaya juice on Tuesdays. Why on Tuesday, you might ask? Because that's when her man is not home to beat her for talking to people. Yes, so how Rafaela and her man met, she loves dancing, so she was out dancing. He met her dancing, and then he said, "You're not allowed to dance anymore. You're too beautiful. You're gonna stay inside, and if you try and come out, I'm gonna fucking beat you." And I feel like this is what a lot of men do, right? Y'all love the sexy bitches that show their titties and show their ass and dance around. And then when they continue to be sexy bitches, y'all are mad. And another theme popping up is owning women, owning the sexuality of women, and just owning women in general. He doesn't want to appreciate her dancing ability and her sensual spirit and her beautiful looks. He wants to own it, and he wants to keep it away from other people and say, "Yep, that's mine. I have it." So, what she has to resort to doing on Tuesdays is calling out through the window to the children and saying, "Hey, I'm going to let you down $1. Please go buy me a coconut or a papaya juice and send it back up to me." But it tastes a lot less sweet because she doesn't have the freedom to go get it herself. And so she sits by the window and waits for Tuesday to come every Tuesday. So in the next chapter, we meet another one of Esperanza's friends named Sally. I really Right now you're gonna feel bad for Sally, and that's absolutely okay, but just know it won't last long. So Sally is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful girl. She's got hair that's long and black like raven's feathers. She's got eyes like Cleopatra that she puts makeup on every day. She wears nylons, so we can see that she's a little bit more impure. That's kind of the um not allegory. That's kind of the metaphor that nylons are giving in this book, is that, sexual activity going on. Okay. And she's just a beautiful girl and everyone knows it. And her father hates her for it and is like, "No, you can't be going outside like that. You're dangerous. You're dangerous for going outside like that." And it's like, no, what's dangerous are the men that feel entitled to something just because they see a beautiful girl. What's dangerous is the fact that rather than protect her, her father is telling her it's her fault if something's happened to her. if something happens to her. What's dangerous is telling her to, you know, relegate herself to this strict religion rather than figuring out who she is in a safe way. That's what's dangerous. And so all of these things add up. And unfortunately, it is very heavily implied that she at some point gets sexually assaulted. And after that, she starts, pulling her skirts down, wearing longer skirts. She doesn't wear her makeup anymore. The joy is gone. Her hair is dull. And at school, the boys are talking about her and bullying her and, slut shaming her, calling her names because obviously they know what happened. And it's probably just another guy's conquest story, her trauma, right? And what we also see, unfortunately, is that her best friend takes the side of the boys and, slut shames her, calls her dirty, nasty names, hurts her physically, and they're not friends anymore. And now Sally goes straight home after school. She doesn't talk to anyone. She doesn't do anything. Even on the playground, she just kind of stares off into space and waits for it to be over. And then we have to decide whether Esperanza loves Sally or is in love with Sally, whether she sees herself in Sally or she wants to be with Sally, right? And so she's kind of thinking in her head, she's like, Sally, I know you wish you could get away. I wish I could like put you in a house somewhere and give you everything you want. I'm more on the side of she loves the idea of Sally because she wants to be Sally. She knows that if she was just a bit prettier, that would be she would be Sally. That would be her. She would defy all odds and she would put on those nylons and she would do up her makeup and hair and she would say fuck you guys and she would be Sally. And she wants Sally to be able to live that for herself. She wants her to be able to be herself because Esperanza wants to be herself because she wants all women to be able to be themselves without being punished for it, without being punished for simply being pretty. So, what she dreams of for Sally, which is the world, which is freedom, she also is dreaming of for herself, not necessarily in a selfish way. I think she does want that for Sally, but I don't think she realizes that she's kind of projecting. Like, you don't know what Sally wants. You know what I mean? Maybe Sally knows what she wants. And if you want to live in a beautiful house and you want to put on beautiful makeup and you want to wear beautiful gowns, girl, go do that. But right now, you're fantasizing about a girl that at this point is not completely 100% your friend. They become better friends. But for now, she's kind of just fantasizing, wishing that Sally had a better life. So in the next chapter, we meet Minerva, and I like to think that Minerva is showing us what Sally's future could be if she falls victim to Mango Street, right? So Minerva is a bit older than Esperanza, but she already has two kids and a husband that keeps leaving. And he keeps leaving because he keeps coming back, right? And she keeps letting him back. But one day she tries to throw out his clothes and she's like, get away from me. I don't want your help with the kids anymore. Like, I just don't want you anymore. And the next day he comes back and throws a brick through the window and leaves her black and blue. And she's like, oh, okay, well, I guess you can stay because I really don't feel like getting beat. And she also lives with her mom who raised her the same way, right? And in this chapter, we can see how hopelessness works its way through a family, but also through a community because the mom felt hopeless to her man, right? And then raised her daughter who felt hopeless to another man and feels even more hopeless because it's not like her mom is backing her up. I mean, her mom is, you know, tending to her wounds, but her mom isn't necessarily helping her get out of the situation or standing up to her man for her. And then obviously we see that behavior will be learned in the kids because it was learned in Minerva and repeated. But then at the end of the chapter, it ends with next week she comes over black and blue and asks what can she do. Minerva, I don't know which way she'll go. There is nothing I can do. So even the people around her, not even just the family, the community, her friends, well, there's nothing I can do. He's just going to keep coming back and well, that's just kind of how they are and then the kids are going to do it too. Like what am I supposed to do? And we kind of see this plague of helplessness take over communities like this because it's no one else is coming to help them and it gets tiring. It gets tiring always having to help yourself out of something because there's no resources for anything else to play out. You either have to do it or you have to get comfortable where you are. And for a lot of people, it's just easier to be comfortable with the pain that you already grew up knowing. So speaking of having to, save yourself and having to know that no one is going to come for you, the next chapter is called Bums in the Attic. And a pastime that Esperanza's family does is they all get into her father's car on his days off and they ride around the rich neighborhood that's at the top of the hill. And basically they fantasize about, the kinds of houses that they'll buy when they have money. And again, they're looking out the car windows. And Esperanza decides, I'm not going to look out this window. Again, she's deciding not taking that place by the window. She says, I actually am going to have a house. And when I do have a house, I'm not just going to, act like people like us don't exist and sit at the top of the hill. I'm going to have bums in my attic. And people are going to ask, oh, are those rats? And I'll be like, no, they're bums. And I'm going to have a great time housing those people and giving opportunity to those people. However, comma, this is the United States, unfortunately, and that's just not something that's feasible to happen most of the time. And it makes you feel like shit because you have to leave a big portion of your community behind in order to help yourself, and you have to help yourself. But every person who has helped themselves from a situation like this has people that they wish they could have brought with them, has people that they wish they could have put into their attic or into their basement or into their spare bedroom. We always dream of helping these people, but then when we start helping ourselves we realize how hard it is to even help ourselves, let alone other people. But, she has a good heart, and we love her for that. And maybe she will have a bum in her attic. Hopefully, not a man that she relies on. In the next chapter, it's called Beautiful and Cruel. Esperanza continues with the theme of breaking these norms and deciding, I am my own person and that's what I'm going to do. So, unfortunately, the first sentence is, I am an ugly daughter. Let's get into that. I genuinely don't think you can call. Oh, where's the picture, Queen? This woman ugly. Point blank, period. It's just not possible. She's a beautiful woman with curly hair, and she grew into a beautiful woman. However, I think what she means when she says, I am an ugly daughter, is she's ugly in the way that she's not going to do anything that anyone wants her to do. She doesn't say, I am the ugly daughter. She says, I am an ugly daughter. I'm not a daughter that you're going to brag about. Oh, I'm not the daughter that has the beautiful wedding picture. I'm not the daughter with the long, sleek hair. I'm not the daughter with the pretty legs. I'm the daughter with the brain. I'm the daughter with the balls. I'm the daughter with the guts. I'm the daughter that's the trendsetter. I'm the daughter that makes you a bit uncomfortable. That is ugly in this world that is not very accommodating to women. But at the same time, Esperanza has seen where pretty women get. So I feel like in this sense, she is embracing being ugly. Also, if you see my nails, I dyed my hair, child, and I do not wear gloves. Hi. She is embracing the fact that she is not pretty. And at this point in time, I think she's okay with that. I think she doesn't necessarily want to be pretty because she sees where these pretty girls who don't do anything more than be pretty have ended up. And so again, she's embracing that. She's like, I'm going to take this and run with it. I'm going to defy these cultural and gender norms, and I'm going to embrace being ugly so I can start being myself. In the next chapter, we actually see a rare moment of her mom helping her foster some kind of growth instead of just being kind of dismissive and horrible. They're cooking, and she's having a conversation with her daughter, and she kind of says, out of the blue, shame is a bad thing. It keeps you down. You want to know why I quit school? Because I didn't have nice clothes. No clothes, but I had brains. Yep, she says, disgusted. I was a smart cookie then. So obviously she's, giving Esperanza a word of warning, but I also think this is something deeper, right? We haven't seen many emotional interactions with Esperanza and her mother. The most emotional interaction that we saw between her and her parents was when she was comforting her father because his father died. And the last thing we saw about her mother was that whole thing with the rice sandwich when she was like, "Y'all kids making me do work," and all she asked was a sandwich to go home to go to school with, right? They don't really have many deep conversations. And as we can see, Esperanza is mostly raising herself as well. So I'm sure this is probably as deep as her mom gets, right? But being a mom, being a woman, we talked about the first job when Esperanza got sexually assaulted. When you come home after that, there is an energy. There is an energy, especially when your mom looks at you. And I just feel like, if you've been there, if you've been there, it's the eyes of recognition of, oh, something has changed in my daughter, and I'm pretty sure I know what it is. And that's the same also for just losing your virginity in general. It doesn't have to be a bad experience. Your mom can tell. Your mom can tell. And so I feel like, yes, her mom is telling her, focus on your brain. Don't be ashamed of, not being the pretty girl. But her mom also senses shame in her daughter, and she wants her to know that things that aren't your fault are not things to be ashamed of, right? And there are many things that she could be referring to, being the ugly daughter, being ashamed of where they live, her house, being ashamed of being an immigrant, being ashamed of the sexual assault. And so there are many things that could be bringing Esperanza down in this moment. And there's just no way that her mom doesn't know. So I'm glad she said something. Now we're getting back to Sally and we're seeing their friendship kind of grow and develop a little bit more. And I do want to just point out before we get there that as she's becoming friends with Sally, right? Sally is a more mature person, right? She is sexually mature. She's had some sexual activity. Okay. She knows a bit more things about a bit more things. We haven't seen Lucy and Rachel since Esperanza's aunt died when they were playing that immature game. And I really think that probably Esperanza and Lily didn't really care. They're not really that close to, they weren't really that close to Esperanza's aunt. It was just another person they were imitating. And I think Esperanza realized, okay, like it's time for me to move on from these people. I've grown a little bit. I don't necessarily think they're bad people, but they're not Esperanza's people. And now she's moving on to Sally. So we're kind of seeing, again, a change in her relationships, a change in who she keeps around her. And I just wanted to point that out. So this chapter is called What Sally Said. And basically, we're just looking at what Sally has to deal with at home, which is being beat by her father because her father is emotionally incestuous. What does that mean? So, Sally, again, very, very beautiful girl, very beautiful girl. Does that mean she's fucking every guy that she's talking to? Absolutely not. But if you're an emotionally incestuous dad, yes, it does. You only want her attention to be on you. And that's, again, with the owning the daughters, owning the wives, owning the women, and holding on to this purity culture because you want to own her innocence. You don't really care about her at the end of the day. You care about making sure that no one else can have her. So when he sees his daughter talking to a kid after school, he just beats her black and blue. He just beats the fuck out of her and sends her right to school. And again, we see the mom not really doing anything. And at the end of the day, like, yes, the mom is probably getting beat too, but to simply tend to your daughter's wounds and not really say anything about it, and again, just send her to school like that when everyone knows something's wrong, I have a problem with you. I have a problem with you. Um, but that is Sally opening up to Esperanza and basically telling her, yeah, I mean, what everyone says, it's true. That's what my dad does. Guys. This next chapter, it's called The Monkey Garden. I'm fairly certain you can find all chapters of this book on SparkNotes. If you read one chapter, even if it's not the hair chapter, even if it's not the hips chapter, even if it's not the Four Little Trees chapter, it needs to be The Monkey Garden. Okay, this is one of the longest chapters in the book. and it is chock full of metaphors and allegories and just all the fun things that we love getting into, right? So, first, I would like to say overall that the monkey garden is an allegory for the Garden of Eden, and even a monkey could be seen as like an early human. So, this is a very fertile, a very like perfect kind of dream world land that's hidden in the back of this terrible, terrible place called Mango Street. It's Esperanza's own little paradise. It's all of the children's little paradise, but Esperanza especially has this kind of childlike connection to the monkey garden. And I really want you to remember that as we're talking about it today. So the reason it's called the monkey garden is because there was this family that lived there and they were basically a bunch of hillbillies and they had this illegal pet monkey. And he used to rule the monkey garden, but he's gone now and it's kind of overgrown again with all this greenery, all these beautiful flowers. There are abandoned trucks, but they've been overgrown with ivy. You know, there's lots of bees. Just a beautiful little place to frolic, right? Childlike, childlike. That's what Esperanza attributes to this. This is what that's what she connects to the monkey garden is a childlike sense of wonder. She says that in the monkey garden, it seemed like death wasn't a thing. And I don't know if you guys have read the Bible. Okay, I've read it a couple times. Yeah. Okay. In the Garden of Eden, death is not a thing. At least until Eve ate the apple, even though Adam has the Adam's apple. So like, what's up? What's up? Anyways, death was not a thing. So that further adds to the allegory of it being the Garden of Eden. But one day, Esperanza does try to kill herself in the monkey garden. And it doesn't work. She says even the monkey garden would not have her. But that was the last time that she went to the monkey garden, obviously, before what we're about to get into right now. And just note that the kind of grown up and mature act of suicide simply did not fit into the perception of the monkey garden. And maybe that's part of the reason why it didn't work, is it's just not something that fits into there, right? Well, we're about to see the monkey garden mature just a little bit because she sees Sally there. And remember, Esperanza is not sexually mature at all. Sally is. Esperanza has a lot more caution around men than Sally does, and you'd think it would be the other way around since she's getting beat back black and blue by her dad. But people react to things in different ways, right? She probably became hypersexual because of the abuse of her father, and Esperanza just doesn't really understand that. So Esperanza sees Sally over by this blue car in the monkey garden surrounded by like three or four dudes. And they stole her keys and they're like, "Oh, we'll give you your keys back if you like give me a kiss." Except it's like not just one dude, it's like all four dudes saying like, "If you give me a kiss," right? And Esperanza sees this and she gets a terrible, terrible feeling in her gut. Terrible, terrible feeling. Even though she knows that Sally is a more sexual girl than her, she gets a horrible feeling. So she runs to Sally's house and tells her mom, "Hey, I think your daughter is about to get assaulted in the garden." And the mom, God, I hate her mom. Her mom says, "What do you want me to do? Call the police?" Doesn't even look up from the dishes she's washing. Doesn't care. And the fact that her initial response is not, "Oh, what do you want me to do? Go get her?" She says, "Call the police," because she knows damn well what's happening. Just like she knew what was happening with her husband. Esperanza runs back to the garden and she has a couple of sticks and a brick and she's planning to go save her friend. And instead, Sally says, "What the fuck are you doing? Get out of here." And they all look at her like she's stupid. And again, Esperanza just doesn't understand why you would want to be in that situation. So she's feeling very embarrassed. She's feeling very sad. She wishes that she could be mature and understand the things that these girls and these boys understand, but she just doesn't. So she runs away to the back of the monkey garden and she kind of entangles herself in the more jungly part of it. Um, She runs away to the back of the monkey garden and she's kind of wondering, like, why can't I grow up? Why can't I just be normal? Why can't I just be regular? And once again, she's trying to will herself into death. She read somewhere that there are monks that could lower their heart rate so low that it like hits zero basically. And she's trying to do that. But as she's laying there, it doesn't work. So she just basically gets up after realizing that once again it doesn't work and she's stained green. And let's get into what that means. Her being stained green can actually mean multiple things. Green can, denote youthfulness because plants are green before they turn brown, right? They're that bright, springy green when they're young and when they're, what is it called? When they're young, when they're youthful. When they're innocent. There we go. That's the word. We can also take it as envy, right? She might be envious that she doesn't understand the position that Sally's in. She doesn't understand the desires that Sally and these boys around her have. She just doesn't understand. And she ended up looking stupid because she's just so ugly that she can't even understand these sexual situations. Why can't she be grown up like Sally? Why can't she understand what's going on? Why can't she understand what desire is, right? And that's why I really love this chapter because you can interpret her reaction to this experience in many different ways. And again, we have to wonder, does she want to be Sally or does she want Sally? The chapter ends with Esperanza getting up and going back home, but first she looks down at her shoes and her white socks, her clunky shoes and her white socks. And let's remember, the whole thing with feet is all of the girls that she describes as like very pretty and very sexual. She always says that they have small feet. So I feel like, the daintiness, the womanliness that is associated with small feet, that's something that she really, carries around with her. But also her socks are white and she's realizing that she doesn't like them anymore. So we are seeing that some of this innocence is being taken away because, obviously white innocence, pretty easy connection. She doesn't feel like it's for her anymore. She wants to take the socks off. She wants to be mature. Maybe she wants to put some heels on. Maybe she wants to finally have bare feet. She wants to be a woman. So the next chapter we have is called Red Clowns, and I just want to be like fully transparent. Massive trigger warning for rape. I'm not going to say that it's anything like crazy explicit, but it is obvious what's going on. And as she is maturing, she's able to describe these events a bit better. And I just feel like if this is something that you have been through, I feel like Cisneros does a great, great job of depicting how your mind is working during these events. And if you don't want to read that, if you don't want to hear about that, here's your trigger warning. Okay. Keep in mind, Sally is her friend. Keep in mind, she wants to be like Sally. She trusts Sally and she values the words that come out of Sally's mouth, right? Also keep in mind, she wants to mature sexually. She wants that. She wants to do it in a healthy way. She wants to have fun doing it, but it is something that she wants and Sally knows that. This is something they have talked about before. Sally basically tells Esperanza to wait somewhere for her by these like four red clowns at this like carnival and is like, yo, I'm gonna meet you there. Right. So she's waiting, waiting, waiting. Unfortunately, the spot that she told Esperanza to wait, she set Esperanza up to get raped by like three dudes. And reading through it, they do seem quite a bit older. So I'm guessing that maybe she paid them or maybe they're her dad's friends or something. Um, and she just keeps calling out for Sally and wondering where she is, when she's going to come, why she lied to her about coming, why she lied to her about sex being fun, why she lied about, male attention being something that's nice to have. Um, it's just not a fun chapter. And it ends with him saying, she says, he said, I love you, Spanish girl. And I really want to get into that because, along with the degradation of women addressed in this book, we have to look at a smaller picture of the degradation of immigrant women, the degradation of Hispanic women. It's very, it's not necessarily something I can speak on, but Hispanic women are often seen as more sexual, a little bit more feisty, something desirable, something that, everyone wants to get a piece of. And that doesn't just start when they're hot, sexy, fine 25-year-olds. You know what I mean? It unfortunately starts basically as soon as they start going through puberty and getting into, semi-sexual situations that are part of growing up. And unfortunately, Black and brown women, but right now we're talking about Hispanic women, get taken advantage of more than their other counterparts. And so we are seeing that here, where it's specifically like her race is a detriment to her in this instance. I really hope I like tackled that chapter well enough. I feel like you can tell it's just not really something I personally am going to delve any deeper into. If you want to read it though, it's called Red Clowns. It's a fairly short chapter, and I think you should read it if you've been raped. I feel like you should read it, and I really do feel like it helps you set some things at ease in your mind. And it might make you cry. That's okay. Um, that's Red Clowns. So you might be wondering, like, why would Sally do that? They're friends. Why would Sally do that? I really feel like this was retaliation for Esperanza going and telling Sally's mom that she was basically having an orgy with those dudes. It's not like that was Esperanza's intent. Her intent was actually to try and help her. But I think what probably happened is Sally probably came home. Her mom probably told her father, and Sally probably got beat fucking senseless. And maybe even her mom helped or was a part of it. I feel like that's implied. And so I feel like, the next day, it was literally the very next chapter, that's when she set Esperanza up because, she's getting physically harmed, obviously, without her consent. And so she wanted to give some of that back to Esperanza. And so she said, well, you're going to go here and you're going to get fucked over too. And we can see how misogyny penetrates communities to make it so even the women are bringing down other women in some of the most misogynistic and disgusting ways. Um, I don't like Sally. But guess what? She gets her karma in the very next chapter. Okay, she gets married off, and she has to move to a state where she can get married before eighth grade, which means these children are very young, which means she was very, very young when she set up her friend to get raped. Disgusting, disgusting. She tells everyone she's in love, but obviously everyone knows that she did it to escape her father. But what's that saying? It's like if you grew up with an angry man in your house, then you'll like have an angry man in your house. You'll always have an angry man in your house. Well, she just has an angry man in her house. She has all of the material things she wants, but she comes home and she gets beat like everyone else. But what's different about Sally is that he doesn't even let her look out the window. She can't even hope. She can't even dream. And I would like us all to remember that she took away Esperanza's dream of having a good first sexual experience. She took away Esperanza's hope of a man wanting her in a pure and loving way. She took away Esperanza's hope of having a best friend, dream of having a real connection, because she wanted to hurt her. So I don't really care that she can't look out the window and dream. I don't really care. In the next chapter, we see Rachel and Lucy again because their sister has died and their mom has basically invited everyone into the house to like look at the dead baby and give condolences. It's interesting. It's interesting. Um while she is at this little get together, she can't bring herself to look at the baby because she feels weird doing it, which good call, good call. And these three sisters that are like kind of older spy her and they're like, yo, come here. And when I say older, I mean like old. Do y'all know the mythology, the three fates? Hold on. Let's see how fast I can type. Okay. There's the spinner that spins the thread, the one that measures the thread of your like fate, and the one who cuts the thread when you died, right? And then I think in Percy Jackson there was like one with an eye that could like see or something. Three sisters, they can tell your fate. That's kind of the vibe that we're going off of right here. And they basically tell her that you will always be Mango Street. You can't erase what you know. You can't forget what you are. And you must remember to come back for the ones who cannot leave as easily as you. And I feel like, in this chapter, really, they help her realize that growing from something doesn't have to mean pretending it never happened. You can grow from Mango Street without acting like you were never here just because you didn't want to be here. You can grow from that rape. You can grow from that assault by acknowledging it did happen and realizing that you can become a different person after that. You don't have to stay on Mango Street. You don't have to stay in that memory. And if you go back to it, you can go back a different person that's able to deal with it. Um, and so I really feel like that's what they had her coming to terms with. Um, In the next chapter, again, she's talking to one of her female friends. Her name is Alicia, and Alicia also tells her, like it or not, you are Mango Street. And one day you'll come back. And Esperanza tells her, no, I'm not going to come back until someone makes it better. I'm not coming back to this fucking place. And Alicia asks her, who's going to make it better, the mayor? And they both laugh because, well, they know, again, in these underserved communities, it's because there are people actively choosing to not help. Like there are people in charge that are supposed to be helping them, and they are actively choosing to not help. Um, but at the same time, it's like everyone knows Esperanza is destined for greatness. But she, at this point, is just like, oh, I just want to get out. But that's why she's destined for greatness, because she just wants to get out. She doesn't want to prove anything. She doesn't want to, she does want to take people with her, but it's not like she wants to take like a man with her or a family with her. She just wants to get out. And, that's what's gonna lead her there. That's what's gonna get her out, is her ambition and her unwavering I'm going to get out. We see right after this, in fact, that she's kind of like in a dream like little trance right here, in the second to last chapter called A House of My Own, where she's really like planning out that house. She's really envisioning it like it's something that's real. To me, it's akin to like going on Pinterest and making a Pinterest board. It's like, okay, like I am visualizing it. This is, I'm making this board because this is now something that I realize I can have. And she's realizing that she doesn't have to rely on a man to get a house. She doesn't have to pick up other people's garbage and make babies for them just to be able to get somewhere. Like she can do it herself. She will have a house of her own, and she won't follow in the footsteps of every woman that is in their man's house, looking out their man's window, right? And then the last chapter is Mango says goodbye sometimes. And I love that she's not saying goodbye to Mango Street. She never says goodbye to Mango Street. Mango Street says goodbye to her because she knows now that she'll be coming back. It's not a goodbye, it's a see you later. And she's basically just appreciating Mango Street for what it was and how it shaped her, and finally accepting the fact that Mango Street is a part of her. Mango Street is the part of her. Mango Street is her. And Mango Street has helped her mature and develop in so many ways that she would never have been able to anywhere else. And when she personifies Mango Street, she uses she. Mango says goodbye sometimes. She does not hold me with both arms. She sets me free. And that is because Mango Street nurtured her, raised her, but didn't trap her and let her go to become something bigger. Mango Street does not own her. Mango Street doesn't want to own her. That's why Mango Street is as a she, because we've seen how the men feel entitled over the women throughout this book. Mango Street let her go. And that's why she's coming back. And because we know she's coming back, and because we know how she ends up, this book ends on an air of hope. And what is hope in Spanish? Esperanza. That wraps up The House on Mango Street. It was a quick little read. I know, I thought it would be perfect for Hispanic Heritage Month. If you read this in school, I envy you. I think you should read it again. I think you should bring that foundation into a more personal understanding of the book. I love this book. This is probably like the fourth time I've read it, and it just hits me a different way every time I read it. So I would really recommend reading it multiple times, like maybe like every other year or something, because you will realize something new about yourself. But guys, what's our next book? What is our next book, guys? It's The Great Gatsby. Y'all, I have been waiting for the right time to I'm about to cry to pop this book open. Okay, and next month is my birthday, so I just thought, for my birthday month, let's read something a little bit gay. Let's read something a little iconic. I cannot wait to break this down with you guys. I cannot wait to discuss this with you guys. I think this is going to be I think it's going to be a second to last book of the year. So stay tuned for that in 2 weeks. Again, thank you for finishing this book, all the rest, all the others with me. Stay literate, y'all. I will see you later.